Hi everybody, Beth here from Access Paranormal. For this week's I Want to Know, which is all about why do you see black shadows at the corner of your eye while paranormal investigating? A great question, and I know for some people when they would have looked at this question originally would have thought, well, you know, it's kind of really obvious, but believe it or not, it's not a very obvious answer to this as well, because it's about how our brains are made up and how our eyes are made up as well. Hi Tina, hi Renata, good to see you guys. So it's a very interesting question, and one I was really appreciative to have, particularly when recently when I was last month when I was investigating Bobby Mackey's with Alison and Cag of Adelaide's Haunted Horizons. I was seeing a lot of shadows at the corner of my eye across the bar. That's why I'm always very intrigued about this particular subject as well. And I've done my research in the past, but I thought it's still very interesting to talk about how, you know, why we do this, why we see this while investigating. And again, like I said, it's not as obvious an answer as you may think. You know, it's like, oh, you know, eye roll, but it's actually really interesting how we're made up. Hi Damo, it's good to see you too, lovely. So of course we'll get stuck into it. So I'll talk a little bit about the biology side of it when it comes to how our eyes are made up and why it affects us when it comes to paranormal investigating in this particular situation. Because there's a couple of theories as to why we may possibly see shadows or movement or possible spirit entities in our peripheral vision or our side vision that some may actually think about as well. So hi Damo's great. Hey Michelle, good to see you too, lovely. So eyeballs, let's talk about your eyeballs. Okay, so what happens is so obviously you're not operating machinery or driving while watching this, and if you are, you're multitasking, and I'm not sure whether to be mad or happy about it or impressed. But if you ever move your hand near, say for instance, the side of your face like this, you will see movement and you'll see a shape. You won't actually see the detail, and you won't see the colour the way you would if it was to be, a hand would be in front of your face, particularly up close as well. So that's a way to be able to, you know, the difference between seeing something in the front of you and seeing something to the side of you is very, very different. Obviously, you're not getting the detail here. The way our brains and the way our eyes are made, when we don't have the same detail in the way that our eyes are made as animals would. So obviously with evolutionized, we don't really need to have really strong peripheral vision because we're not being hunted as an animal would still be doing so in some capacity. So in that being the case, our peripheral vision is nowhere near as like for an animal as well. Hi Kat, good to see you, gorgeous. Also, this peripheral, we're not going to get really good colour and or shape as well. So at the moment, my hand here, I can see some sort of a shape. It may look like a hand, but as I look towards it directly, then of course I can see the colour properly and I can see the shape. So again, it's trusting the colour and shape from your peripheral is something that you've got to be really careful about. Also, the reason why we have peripheral vision is the fact that we're actually there. It's there to help detect movement. So we're not meant to see the detail. We're actually meant to just be able to detect movement enough for us to be able to go, oh, look, there's something happening. Oh, look, there it is. That's the reason why we have it. And also another thing is the distance is actually very difficult to ascertain as well from your side vision. So keep that in mind as well when you're out paranormal investigating too. Hi Michael, good to see you there, mate. So yeah, a couple of things to keep. As I said, it's not meant to be as detailed. Reason being is the way our eyes are made up. Now it's hard to try and make it simplified, so I'll do the best as I can. We've got receptor cells in our eyes, and they're more dense in the center of our retina. And they are less dense further out, and that's where we can actually get to rely on the detail of what we actually see as individuals. Also, I always chuckle about this. We have cones in the middle of our eyes. chuckle. We have cones in the middle of our eyes, which are really, really detailed. That helps us see, again, not just the density of our receptors, but the cones in our eyes. But then as our eyes are further out from there, we have what we call rods. So rods are on the outer parts of our eye there, but the cones are actually in the inner part of our eyes there. And because of that, it's a very different physical makeup. So reason being is the fact that, say for instance, in low light, our rods in our eyes will actually have to rely on the rods in our eyes. while we're out investigating. That's the really interesting part about it. And you're thinking, obviously, we've gone through a little bit about the fact that there's, it's not as detailed. You're not going to get the same color. Your distance is going to be really, really different and not as accurate. But yet, in low light conditions, the cones in our eyes just don't work as well as they should. They need more light. So that we rely on the rods on the sides of our eyes to be able to actually see better at night. Also, another problem with that is it can take a minimum of up to 30 minutes for the rods in your eyes to actually adjust in low light conditions as well. So that's something to keep in mind if you're doing an investigation and you're out and, you've only been there for maybe half an hour and, you think you may have seen something. Give it an extra 10 minutes if you're time restrained, but try and stay as long as you can. Obviously, that may not always be the case, especially if you're doing events, but keep that in mind, the fact that it can take that long for your eyes to adjust, and it's actually then relying on a part of your eye that's actually not going to be as detailed as it should be anyway. Hi, Cassandra. Good to see you. Lovely. Hey, Rob. Hey, Julie. Oh, everyone's here tonight. So there's that too. Also, another thing to do is say, for instance, that might help explain when we, say, for instance, we see a shadow at the side of our eye or movement, and we look at it and it's gone. Now, it could appear to possibly be an entity, but what we have to be very careful about is that we've actually detected movement. But because we haven't got distance, we're going to look at it and see it and see that it's disappeared, but it could be something quite small and quite far away that was already there, that it may have moved slightly. But because our detail with our peripheral vision isn't so great, it's actually going to appear to be a possible entity. And it's the whole disappearing side of things as well. That's something to keep in mind too. Oh, it was nice to do. Oh, thank you, mate. That's why pirates wore an eye patch. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Too much receptor, too much rod in the eye. But yeah, so it's another thing to keep in mind. That's one a bit of a problem when it comes to paranormal investigating, is the fact that once we look at something, it will change. The shape and the color will change completely as well. Then, of course, most of us know about pareidolia as well. Most of us know about the fact that our brains will also start to look at something more human, and see a face and or a body shape in something when it's not there. But that's because we want to be familiarized, we want to feel safe, and we want to know who we've got, a friend or a foe with us as well. Hi, Mandy. Good to see you, gorgeous. Ghosts. Yes, Jane, ghosts. It's all ghosts. Love it. Also, another thing to keep in mind, I'm not sure if any people really know of it, but when you see something and your brain is trying to make sense of it, it may not be just from a pareidolia side of it, but there's another term called visual substitutions. And that basically means that sometimes when we see something and we can't make sense of it, our brains will try and piece together information to make sense of it. Now, of course, that's another thing to keep in mind with investigating, which is really difficult because obviously we're doing it in low light conditions where it's very susceptible to that. So again, visual substitutions, and you're doing it unconsciously as well. You're doing it from a point of view, it's just happening without you really being aware of it too. So that good old thing about being human really does suck. So there's that as well. Another problem could also be is autokinesis, which is where if you stare at an object long enough, a small object, it may appear as if it's moving. That's another thing to keep in mind. So say, for instance, I've had this happen to me before. There could be a device like an EMF detector of some sort, or even a voice recorder on a table or on the ground. Look at it long enough, it's got a low light. It actually may appear that the actual object is moving after a while, so that's something too to keep in mind. But that's even just from looking ahead. That's not even something from a peripheral vision side of it as well. It would possibly, I would imagine, but again, it could be one or the other to be aware of too, which really is annoying, but as long as you're aware of it. One way to possibly counteract that would probably be having a video camera on that particular area as well, so you can actually verify whether something had moved or not. And obviously if you've got voice recorders, if there's sound, all that kind of stuff as well, there's that too. Now, I know Jane said spirits is all spirits. There is a thought as the reason why we may actually see possible entities in our peripheral is the fact that we're a lot more relaxed in that particular vision stream. Sometimes people say that when you're chilled and you're not really thinking about it, that's when entities will come through and try and communicate with you. Sometimes there are people who feel that when they are taken over by a particular entity, that is because they weren't really thinking about it, they were off guard. So there's the theory as the reason why we actually may possibly see possible spirit entities in our peripheral vision is because we're really chilled out at the particular time as well. Hey, Cara, good to see you, lovely. And Cag, yay! There's that too. But also, I know there's been a couple of reports about people who, even when they're driving and they'll see a shadow at the side of the road and they may be feeling a bit tired, there's some people who believe that it could be the brain's way of waking you up in order for you to survive. So there could be that side of it too. Of course, there's other people who believe that maybe it's the other side trying to keep you alive by showing its presence. So there's a couple of ideas as why people believe that we actually do possibly see shadow people or figures on the corners of our eyes. But there's lots of things to think about when it comes to that. As I said, we're relying on parts of our eyes at nighttime that aren't particularly great with detail, with color as well. So that may explain why everything seems to be black. But then again, it's nighttime. Good luck trying to see that unless you've got some serious night vision going on. I'd be impressed. But yeah, keep that in mind when you're out there investigating as well. But if you any comments and ideas on your thoughts on that too, as I said, there's so much more I could go into about the whole technicality about how the eyes work and all this sort of stuff. But I think I would be here all day, and that's not a bad thing, but it's a bad thing for you because you all have lives. But anyway, use the comment section below. Let me know your thoughts. If you agree, if you've actually feel that you've seen a shadow person and in your peripheral as well. I believe I have quite a few times. Like I said, at Bobby Mackey's recently was the most recent because it was very constant. The interesting thing about that is the fact that with Alison and Cag there as well, Alison didn't see it at all. And Cag saw it a few times, but I was seeing it more frequently. So was it where I was sitting? Was it the kind of the way our brains are made up? It's very, very interesting. So keep that in mind too, whether other people are also seeing it as well. But yeah, let me know your thoughts, everybody. I'd love to know again, and do take care until next week.